Thank you for the opportunity, Zena Foundation. This is Manish Agarwal. My name is Manish Agarwal. I am I'm a graduate from IIT Kanpur 1992 batch, and then from IIM Ahmedabad 1995 batch. Post that, I have worked with several large corporations at very senior positions. I was involved with Citibank, Deloitte, Dell, and my last corporate assignment was as Chief Operating Officer of a solar energy firm based in India. I have done a very interesting 4-year assignment as a visiting faculty to several IIMs in India, and as well as SP Jain Institute of Global Management in Singapore and Dubai. In my personal capacity, I've been involved with a spiritual organization which is called Sri Ramchandra Mission, which promotes heartfulness as a meditative technique. I've been involved with this organization for the last 32 years, and I am very actively engaged with attracting people to various forms of yoga, primarily meditation, under heartfulness. Professionally, now I operate as an independent financial advisor, where I help people with their financial investments and insurance. This is applicable to individuals, families, trusts, and HUS. So with this, I'll start today's session. And in the last session, we essentially covered two most common forms of yoga, which we call as Hatha Yoga and Raj Yoga. Essentially, these are two major branches of yoga. And we saw that how Hatha Yoga, through the use of a divine energy, which we call as Pran, helps human beings maintain and energize themselves in a physical way, and it maintains their physical health, physical and mental health. We also discovered that Hatha Yoga also helps in a certain spiritual way by energizing some of our chakras, which are there in our body. And we also touched upon Raj Yoga, which deals largely with the mind. So the effect of Raj Yoga, which essentially revolves around the wellness of the mind. And it also has very profound effects on our spiritual wellness. So we defined 3 levels of wellness: physical, mental, and spiritual. And we connected with the fact that how Hatha Yoga helps in physical and mental wellness with some limited impact on spiritual wellness. And today we will talk more about Raj Yoga, which majorly impacts our mental wellness and has a profound effect also on our spiritual wellness. Now, there are different forms of Raj Yoga. For example, Vivekananda was a Raj Yogi. Ramakrishna Paramahans also, while he combined various forms of yoga, he was also involved in certain ways with Raj Yoga. So the word Raj comes from the Sanskrit word king. So Raj Yoga stands for the king of yogas. What essentially, literally, it means is it's the king of yogas. Now, if you look back at our Indian tradition, and if you go back thousands of years, we have in our tradition a large number of known rishis who used to practice yoga, and they used to leave worldly life in order to, in fact, they used to go to the forest in order to do what we call as self-realization, or the realization of the Atman. And what we are told through our spiritual heritage is that this involved long years of very, very harsh practice in order to achieve self-realization. Now, just like any worldly technology evolves, and we have seen in the last 50 years explosion, say, for example, in communication technologies, medical sciences, and in many other forms and branches of human endeavor, spiritual technology also evolves. So, for example, Gautam Buddha had to sort of leave his family and go into the forest. Several years he spent in the forest, and then under the Bodhi tree, he got enlightenment. Now, as I said, spiritual technology evolves, So the spiritual technology today has evolved in a way that it is possible to get into the same state which, say, a Gautam Buddha had, or Ramakrishna Paramahans had, or Vivekanand had, while the requirements of very harsh penance into the forest is just not there, which means living like a householder, a normal householder, carrying on with a normal, regular profession. It is now possible using some advances in spiritual technology to achieve those same very high states which our rishis aspired to in the past. So I'll first now from here, what I will do is I will get into a little bit of the metaphysics of how Raj Yoga works, and then we'll talk about some very practical methods by which these high states, which, say, a Vivekananda or a Ramakrishna Paramahans achieved in their lifetime, can be achieved by normal worldly people in no matter which profession they belong to. So what our ancient rishis discovered as part of Raj Yoga was that just like we have a physical existence, there is an existence which we are really not aware of, but it exists. And not only it exists even after we are through with our body, which means when the body drops off, the process which we call death, our existence in another form continues. And what these yogis named this form of existence is, because they said that just like we have a physical body, we also have what is called a Sukshma Sharir. Now, behind this Sukshma Sharir is another Sharir, which they called it as the Karan Sharir. And what they figured out is that the Sukshma Sharir comprises of 4 essential components. One is what we call as Man. Man in Sanskrit stands for the mind. Remember, we are talking of the mind and not the brain, because Western literature tends to equate mind with the brain. And here we are not talking of the mind as the brain, because brain is something physical in nature, which can be touched, felt, observed, whereas mind is something which is an entity which has certain functions, but it's really not physical in nature. So we have Man. The second is Buddhi, which means also in English we can roughly translate it to intellect. The third very important component of our Sukshma Sharir, which is also we call as a subtle body, is ego, which is Ahankar. So in Sanskrit we call it Ahankar. Loosely translated in English, it means ego. And the fourth component is Chit, which loosely translated in English stands for consciousness. Now, what our yogis discovered is that this subtle body, which comprises and the causal body combined, which they called it as the mind-body complex, it continues its existence even when our known body, or body which we are, physical body which we are aware of, drops off. And depending on the situation, depending on what it chooses, it can acquire another body, and this entire process is what we called as rebirth. So, and they discovered this rebirth, of course, now has been also recorded very well in several instances. University of Virginia in particular has a department of perceptual studies, which they call as DOPS. And they have done some very good work on rebirth, where they have documented cases of rebirth not only in India, but also outside India. So our rishis, they were all aware of all this, and they figured out that this mind-body complex comprising of the Sukshma Sharir and the Karan Sharir, on its own choosing, can acquire a new body and then live again, acquire a new body and live a normal human existence. What they further discovered was that in the normal human existence, all our thoughts have a very strong linkage to this subtle and or the Karan Sharir and the Sukshma Sharir. What they discovered again was that every thought that we think leaves an imprint on our Sukshma Sharir. This imprint over a period of time forms what they call as samskara, which is nothing but, you can say, a record of our thought. And this also applies to even our actions. So all thoughts and actions leave an imprint on the Sukshma Sharir. These imprints over a period of time, when they solidify, they form our tendencies. So we have all observed that different children are born of different tendencies. And the source of these tendencies is nothing but their past thoughts and actions. So modern science has not been able to explain why children are born with different tendencies. But this theory, which revolves around this mind-body complex of the Sukshma and the Karan Sharir, explains why each one of us is different and why each child is born with a tendency which is fundamentally different from others. Say, for example, Ravan was always born with a very, very aggressive tendency. In our own families, we see two children born to same parents or multiple children born to same parents, though they live in the same atmosphere, exhibit very, very different tendencies right from childhood. And then based on the environment and their tendencies, they acquire further tendencies, which again are a result of our own thoughts and actions. Now, these tendencies, what they do is, once an imprint of these are formed and they solidify in our Karan Sharir, then what happens is that it tends to cover the what we call as the seat of the soul. The seat of the soul resides in the Karan Sharir, and that seat is full of light, wisdom, divinity, and so on. But it is covered because of our own thoughts and actions, which reside in the subtle body or the Sukshma Sharir. So now the problem is that if we are really divine, as yoga seems to suggest, or all these rishis seem to suggest, then why is it that we are not aware of our Sukshma Sharir or even of our Karan Sharir? So the logical explanation they gave us was that it is because of these tendencies, which are all our thoughts and actions which are leasing these tendencies, that our Karan Sharir is hidden. So in other words, all root of divinity within us is hidden. The example that they gave us was that think of a lantern. So in the lantern, we have a light which is there at the center. But if the glass of the lantern is covered with soot, then a person from outside cannot see the light which is inside. So this soot has to be removed in order for that light to be fully visible and resplendent. Now, our rishis did not stop at that. They tried to figure out ways by which these tendencies can be removed so that the Karan Sharir, which is the seat of the soul, the seat of the Atman, acquires its character or displays its divine characteristics, and we become aware of our own divinity. So the theory is that all human beings, irrespective of race, color, whatever it is, they are fundamentally divine because all of them are imbued with that Karan Sharir, which is nothing but the seat of the Atman. And this Karan Sharir is not resplendent within its divine splendor, despite its fundamental trait of being divine, because of our imprinted tendencies. The next question before our rishis was, how do we remove these tendencies? And they came up with different methods. And today we'll talk about most of those methods were very difficult to practice, and that is why you had rishis going into the forest and spending their entire life in order to explore their own higher inner self. So one of the rishis who was born in the 19th century, he discovered a unique energy which was also divine in its characteristic. And he called this energy transmission. So this divine energy, what it does is it it transforms human individuals. It operates on the Sukshma Sharir and also on the Karan Sharir to some extent. And what it essentially does is that it harmonizes the mind-body complex. And what does that mean? That, as I said earlier, the subtle body or the Sukshma Sharir comprises of Man, Buddhi, Ahankar, and Chit. And these are in a state of disharmony because of those imprints we talked about. Now, what this divine energy does is that it brings about a harmony in all these four components. So our Ahankar, our Man is, or our mind is more regulated. It is more balanced once, and our Ahankar similarly gets balanced in harmony with the mind, and so on and so forth. So now, while they discovered this transmission, what they figured out was that the nature of this transmission is such that it strengthens existing tendencies. So supposing I have a person who is a thief and I transmit to that person will become a pakka thief. He'll be a very strong thief. His tendencies to steal will become stronger. In other words, they had to then find, the rishis had to then find a method by which the grip of these tendencies on human beings is loosened. And then they devised another method where they figured out that using the willpower in human beings, it is possible to weaken and remove these tendencies. So just like in the grosser world, in the material world, let's say something is gross. Let's say you have to clean the floor. Then if you have to clean the floor, you need a broom, right? And it's physical in nature. But something more subtler, let's say there is a bad smell in a room. You cannot take a broom and clean off the bad smell. You have to open the windows. So in other words, the method to clean something which is subtler more subtler methods have to be employed. And in this case, our rishis discovered that the subtle method in this case is willpower. Human willpower, when sufficiently developed, can operate on other people and weaken some of these negative tendencies. So in combination with transmission, once these tendencies are weakened, then what happens is our Karan Sharir, which is resplendent and divine in its nature, starts coming to the front and we start becoming aware of our divinity. So this is the theoretical framework, and the practice involves essentially about 65 minutes of time commitment every day on part of the practitioner. This time commitment is about 30 minutes of morning meditation, 30 minutes of what they call as evening cleaning, which is to be done typically after day's work is over, and another 5 minutes, which is required just before sleep. So this is part only of the method, and there are a lot of people who are trained all over the world. These people are called prefects or trainers, and there are about 20,000 trainers all over the world who are spread all over the world. They live in normal grahast ashram, and these trainers volunteer their time to train others. And essentially what they do is they use this power of transmission and they use this power of cleaning in order to bring about the desired changes in the individual. Now, what does so this is on the side of how the system works. The other important thing to consider is how does it affect the individual, and why should an individual get into the practice of Raj Yoga through heartfulness or through other means. Now, one of the important things that happens is that once the individual starts practicing sincerely and as prescribed and under guidance, he or she will start experiencing some very interesting changes within himself or herself. So the first change that the person will experience is that the person will start feeling lighter from inside. And this lightness is coming because some of these pre-existing tendencies in that person are being taken off from the Sukshma Sharir. They are no longer part of the Sukshma Sharir. In other words, some load has already been taken out of these individuals. The second thing that they will experience, and this all happens within the first typically 6 months of regular practice as prescribed, is that the individual notices that some of their existing negative tendencies are going off or are reducing in intensity. So let's say a person's mind is very, very distracted. They will see that distraction is much less. Let's say a person gets very, very angry or has a tendency to become very angry. There will be a reduction in the tendency of anger. We get a lot of people who are very regular alcoholics, and what we have experienced is that if the individual practices sincerely and as prescribed, then even the tendency to take alcohol or their need to take alcohol or their wish to take alcohol also reduces. For normal other people, what they will also experience is that their mind is becoming calmer. They are more at peace with themselves. And this peace deepens to an extent where the mind not only becomes calmer, it starts becoming joyful. So it revels in its own delight. It is delightful irrespective of what is happening outside. So in the external world, there may be pressure on them and there may be things that may not be going their way, but in their internal world, they are very, very joyful and happy from inside. We all know that a lot of our physical diseases have their roots in the mind, because the mind is either stressed or it is unhappy. And when the mind is stressed or unhappy, it gives rise to several diseases. A lot of heart diseases have been traced to this physical stress that we all experience in our daily lives. Now, remember, the stress does not go away. What goes away is how we react to that stress. And that makes a world of difference to our own personal wellness. So there comes a stage where we always want to live in that delight. And this delight is not just during the process of meditation, it extends through the day and also through the night. In other words, it becomes all enveloping, provided we are sincere and we really aspire for a higher life. And while we continue in our worldly affairs, this delight does not, or this joy does not in any way leave us. Now, how it is this form of meditation and practice is helpful to all people in all walks of life. One of the things people experience is that their mind is regulated. And as the mind is more regulated, they are able to rest the mind on things that they want it to rest on, which in other words, they instruct the mind where it should rest and what it should do. Normal people do not have that capacity. So think about students. What they will notice is that if a professor is giving a talk in class, their ability to focus on that talk becomes much higher. Similarly, corporate professionals, in my case, I was a corporate professional. What I observed was that my ability to grasp things became much higher simply because my ability to concentrate on some of those things in question had significantly improved. And as we progress in sadhana, there are more vital changes that we start experiencing. Our decision-making capacity goes up. So currently, the way we take decisions is we use what is called the intellect. So intellect is nothing but a storehouse. And this is, remember, all part of what we call as Indian psychology. So intellect is nothing but a storehouse of all our previous experiences. So when we take a decision, what we do is we sort of brood over the problem on the decision on which we are to take. And we have this intellect, which is nothing but a storehouse of all past experiences. And from those past, we throw that information inside our mind, and the intellect processes it based on what we know in the past. And then it throws out an answer. And typically, this is a highly analytical answer where we debate the pros, cons, and so on and so forth. And there's nothing wrong in doing that. It's just that as we improve in sadhana, you will find a lot of these decisions will come to us in a very, very intuitive way, because we start now getting directly connected with our Karan Sharir, which is nothing but the seat of the Atman, and which has all the divine wisdom stored already in it. In other words, we are connected now to an infinite source of wisdom. So this mind-body complex that I earlier talked about, which is the mind from starts changing, the character of the mind starts changing as a result of this sadhana. From earlier, where it was continuously thinking, it shifts from thinking to feeling. It feels. So it develops higher sensitivity. We start becoming more aware of what other people need apart from what we need. And that also helps in building our interpersonal equations within family, friends, and people with whom we deal. Similarly, our ego also starts getting refined, and more we start experiencing more and more humility. And the reason why we start experiencing more and more humility is because now the seat of the soul, which is the Karan Sharir, it starts taking over. And we realize that it's not that we are a very independent entity and we are taking all the distance, but that there is a higher power behind us, which is very divine in its character, which is sort of driving us and the rest of the world in a particular way. And once we become aware of that, our level of understanding of laws of nature also improves. So also we experience that our intellect, our intellect, it starts moving towards, from intellect, it starts becoming wisdom. So instead of thinking, we are starting now to use wisdom. Wisdom will dawn on us automatically. And our consciousness evolves from wherever we are into something which is very divine, and we start experiencing the oneness of all human beings, that there is one divine consciousness which pervades the entire universe, and we are just part of that divine oneness. And this is not something that we experience or we say in a theoretical way, but we experience it in a living, practical way. And this experience by itself is very, very soul stirring for people who have actually gone through it. So this is what this Raj Yoga, and especially this Heartfulness way, can do. And I sort of invite all of you to experience it. And those, we have a website. You can just type Heartfulness on Google. It will take you to the website, and there are ways by which you can connect with the organization. In case you wish to connect with me, you're always welcome to do so. Just write your email in the comments in the video, and I will get back to you. Thanks a lot for your patient listening.
I think we are fortunate to have Mr. Braj Kishore Jha. So if he may have any question, you can open the floor. Manish bhai, are you ready to take questions?
Yes, please go ahead.
I'm Braj Kishore Jha, and although I entered a bit late, as I was busy somewhere else, and I had just simply forgotten that I have given time by 4 o'clock. But I could understand what you talked about, and in fact, I am practicing all those things, not in the name of those things what you are telling, but I am on the job of getting nature sustainability, and I have understood how the world or humanity is lost as we have entered towards human-centric nature. Nature is not human-centric, human is nature-centric. That I have understood, and I am trying to practice that how to recreate the nature sustainability, which has been transferred over the years towards um, war economy, as the nature has been transformed for as if it is human centric. So humanity has gone away. So all those things I couldn't understand what you are telling, and I will try to know more about that. And lastly, what you talked about, that what is the organization's name, I could not follow. So that I will like to know. And what others have the queries, that also will help me in understanding your things better. Thank you.
So I just typed the practice on the chat window, and the organization's name is Shri Ramchandra Mission, but it is now popularly known as Heartfulness. Our global headquarters is based in Hyderabad in a 1150-acre campus, which is called Kanha Shanti Vanam. And this campus is now famous worldwide. We are the world's largest meditation hall, which can seat 100,000 people at one go, and people are invited to visit us. But in any case, we have our trainers all over the world. You can sort of connect to our trainers, including me. I am also a trainer, in order to start the meditation practice.
On this note, can we end? Manish bhai, can we end the session?
Yeah, we are okay. Good to end.
Okay.